some friction will be there. Let's treat friction as information. Parents have to be very vigilant about. Create an environment there where they trust you and confide in you that this is what is happening. The important caveat here is that you plan it with your kids. We have to move now with Gen Alpha from obedience to engagement. So I would say that some friction will be there because see, when your past and the future are so different, some friction is going to be natural. So I would say that let's treat friction as information, right? Not as a failure. We can ask that, okay, what this conflict is trying to tell me, to teach me, where can we adjust and try again? It is also very important for us to pick our battles as parents because there's so many things that are part of normal growing up. They are passing phases. It will go away. So we don't have to be over anxious about every little thing. So there are few things that really need our alertness and very serious action from us. And I have just, through my research and reading and talking to parents, we have identified some concerns. I think that parents have to be very vigilant about. So let me tell you what these are. Body image issues and low self-esteem because of that. Because the more we tried in the women's movement to, say that, like body image is a serious issue, the industry and the media have rarely paid attention to it, and young boys and girls are very rapidly falling prey to this, especially now with all this beauty filters and things where you can change your body shape and your face, and you see all these photoshopped images. Like, there's hardly anybody who is happy with how they look. So this is something parents need to be very vigilant about, and do not add to that by saying negative things about your child's color, your child's weight, how the child looks. The second is cyberbullying. And it is important to remember that your child could be a victim and your child could also be a bully and you don't know. So this is something that you have to be vigilant about because that includes emotional harassment, social exclusion, defamation, revelation of private details, intimidation. So if your child is experiencing any of this or you think is engaged in any of this, immediate action is needed. The third very worrying things and which is rising is online sexual abuse, the circulation of sexually explicit images, messages, leaking personal photos, deepfakes, rape threats, revenge porn. It's like very, very disturbing. And so you have to really make your child aware that this does happen. And then if your child is experiencing any of this, you have to create an environment there where they trust you and confide in you that this is what is happening, right? Cyber extremism in some cases is where your child falls, victim to ideological indoctrination. There is threats of violence, and then it also encourages children to become violent. So that is something to worry about. Commercial fraud and gambling, right? You all know about that. Grooming is something that is being discussed a lot in Western countries. That is when an adult prepares a child over a long time and interactions and, creates an environment which is ripe for sexual abuse and exploitation. So this is something you could read up on and make sure is not happening. And the last one I would say is see little bit of screen time, watching what they enjoy, like interacting with friends, perfectly normal. So when if your child extremely, prefers devices and AI as companion, and he or she shunning human contact and conversation to a great extent, this may have serious repercussions for their relationships. So this is something that you have to be vigilant about. Yeah, so this is a slide which summarizes all the 7 points. Now we come to the most important section, is that what helps. So I have a 7 point toolkit that, okay, as parents, these are the 7 things that you can do, to help your children navigate this environment better, right? So very first thing, and which we already do for our health, is that we should design a family media diet. It's our responsibility to, like we decide our nutrition diet, we plan healthy meals, we plan what product should come in our house and what we will never buy. Similarly, we should decide our family media diet, and it should also include some media fasting, I would say. The important caveat here is that you plan it with your kids and not for them. The media diets have to be planned keeping your kids in the loop. So you are not making decisions for them. You are collectively making these decisions. And also we have to make sure that parents also follow rules. Then if a diet has been decided, we decide that, okay, certain spaces are sacred spaces, for example, nobody will bring the phone on the dinner table, then the parents also equally have to follow that. Because, one thing I've observed, that I see parents and grandparents so much more addicted to their smartphone than kids these days, And I have seen so many parents, and I know parents are hassled and with job and home, and there's so much going on. It's very easy to use your phone as a babysitter. I've seen so many moms telling me that, my baby won't eat till like I show this cartoon on the phone. But my question is that who started it? The baby was not old enough to start this habit. Like who puts the child in this habit? So, when you plan media diets, you also have to follow a diet here. The same thing for AI, there are clear conversations. Also, I would say that if possible for you, if time and your schedule permits, a good media diet includes both a good mix of co-viewing, as we said, like watching things together, doing things together, and individual viewing. So what happens that this is the time when you can really understand your kids' response to what they are watching and experiencing, and so many other things come up. But listen to them without immediately making judgmental remarks. This is the most important thing. So it is also very helpful for parents if you enroll them yourselves in supportive peer groups. There's so many online parents groups where these things are discussed. There are newsletters, there are mailing lists. So that they suggest you good media products that you can enjoy with your whole family. They also tell you what is free for you to enjoy, right? So I think getting updated on these things is very useful. We've also find that if you co-create, so like creative projects using technology, right? Creating greeting cards, festive messages, memory books, films, travel albums. These would help in initiating conversation around technology and also many other topics. And besides, it brings creative joy and togetherness in the family, which we always look for. So this is one thing. And at the end of this, I would say that it's equally important to plan non-media activities for the family, right? Because many a times, and this is again, I'm not saying this, the research has shown that children turn to their gadgets because of boredom, loneliness, and lack of other interesting activities. And then, of course, they lose interest in other activities, and this becomes their only go-to thing. But it starts with, like, child feeling lonely at home, there's nobody to play with, parents are busy, and then they turn to screens. So whatever works best for your kid, whether it's sports, theater, music, art, volunteering, science projects, carpentry, cooking, gardening, whatever it is, make sure that they are hooked to a non-media hobby. And then what happens sometimes that then even their media use is very much structured around this hobby if they really get interested in it. So this is something very important. See, what worries us is that, can you imagine that what would happen to a child who are only constantly interacting with voice-based assistants, for example, like, so here what happens that they start assuming that, if you ask something, the other person has to immediately answer. If they are questioned, challenged, ignored by a human being, they find it very difficult to accept that. Even like the recent research has shown that AI chatbots are trained to agree with you and not confront, right? So once you get into this kind of a habit, when you think that the response has to be immediate, I can't wait for anything, I can't fast forward this person, and then they think that, oh, humans are so boring, technology is so much better. So we don't want that kind of a situation. So I would say that this is like one thing that you can do. The other very similar point is that we have to move now with Gen Alpha from obedience to engagement. So the former strict parenting model, when we decided things for them, we said, okay, kids, these are the rules. Those don't work. So you have to involve them in decision making. Yes, you are making rules. Ask them to first make the first draft of rules. And very often we have seen that when they have made the rules, they make sure that they follow, right? But these things have to start as early as possible. The other pitfall of very strict parenting is not just about media. But the thing is that, if your child is used to continuously receiving instruction from the parents, like what to do, what not to do, who to talk with, they don't develop a sense of discretion on what is right and wrong. They don't actually develop decision-making skills. They will make mistakes, but making mistakes is a very important part of learning the skills. And then it becomes a lifelong habit to just succumb to power, bow to power. So it's very important that right from the beginning, you involve your children in decision making. That doesn't mean that, there are no clear-cut family guidelines or you say yes to everything that say, but if your language is not like victim blaming, why did you do this? Don't you have sense? Instead of, okay, good, thanks for telling me, let's fix this. Okay, let's find out a way to fix it. You develop a kind of trust where your children will come and talk to you. Okay, the third is media and information literacy, and a whole different talk can be given on that. And this can be done in some ways at home. Schools can also have formal sessions on media and information literacy. So if you teach critical thinking skills about media to children, then they know themselves how to resist harmful content, how to, spot misinformation, how to not get trapped by manipulation. And so this is, of course, the harm part. But with a good media and information literacy program, children also learn how to use these platforms as spaces of creativity, learning, and connection. Because believe me, a lot of good also happen on the internet. And we don't want to completely deprive our children of these things, right? So it's important that we create this kind of resilience when they themselves know what to choose, what to keep away from. Right? So the fourth is Yeah. So the fourth is about what kind of conversations, you should have. I have identified three issues that have to all the time come up in your conversations about media, and especially digital media. And there has to be a very clear playbook in the family. So one is consent, right? Nothing should be shared without an enthusiastic, informed yes or no. Whether you're sharing something about a friend, you're sharing a photo, I would say, even when you are sharing something about your child, because time and again, we have seen that sharenting, what we call parents sharing things about their children. We call it sharenting. It has its own risk. Even before your child actually starts using media, the child has a whole history online, which can be misused, right? So consent, very important. See, if I go to a party and I want to post a picture, I ask people in the picture that, are you okay me posting this picture? So only if other people are okay, you post their pictures. Second is control. Teach your child that once it is sent, it's gone from you. You have no control over it, where it will be used, how it will be used, where it will be stored, right? So once you are releasing that control, you're releasing all of these possibilities. So think 10 times before you actually post or share anything. And ultimately, the third thing is that no coercion. Don't succumb to any peer or adult pressure, threat, bribes, or some adults telling you or a friend telling you that keep this secret. So nothing should be a secret. At the same time, see, adolescence, especially, is an age when children do have their, private things they want to keep secrets. That's a different thing, but nothing that is risky or threatening. So what we advise is that, we have to create exit scripts. So as soon as your child is in a situation, which is harmful or risky, they have to just say these sentences. I don't keep secrets that make me uncomfortable. I don't do this. I don't forward this kind of images, and get out, right? So we would say that, okay, a clear plan. Step one, stop engaging. Step two, save evidence. Step three, block and report on platform. And step four, tell a trusted adult immediately, or at least on the same day. So, like all of us now are aware of talking to children about the good touch and bad touch. It's a similar kind of thing. This kind of conversations have to keep happening in the family. So similarly, I would say that, transparency is very important. And because you become too panicky, you start snooping, you look through your child's phone and then you say, why did you send this text? Who did you write the message? Who is this girl? That will take your children away from you. And remember this very carefully, that your children don't have to share their passwords with you. They could be having 10 accounts with 10 different passwords. You won't know. So, and they are much better at doing these things with technology than many of us know, right? So, the only way out here is that, talk to them about possible dangers and threats, show them the good side of technology, and then develop that trust so that they are ready to share their online spaces and activities with us. This is the only thing that ultimately works. So very connected to that is that reducing technology gap with our children is another step we can take, because we can't afford to be ignorant about technology. Right? If that happens, there is a generational distance, and our children start thinking that my parents don't know anything. Like, how can they have any authority on me? Right? Like, I'm so much smarter than them. But a lot of kids who are good with features in technology still need guidance about ethical things, reducing harm, engaging very meaningfully. And adults are very important in doing these things for them. So I don't say that you have to learn every new app or be an expert gamer, but you have to be now aware of that, okay, what is happening, like where is AI heading, what are some of the things that as parents you have to be aware about. So there shouldn't be very wide technology gap between you and your parents. Even before you buy a gadget, don't get pressurized by your children. Do your research. Does the child really need that gadget? What good it can do? What harm it can have? Have that conversation, make certain conditions, and then buy. And the final seventh point is advocacy, right? Because people like parents, educators, all of us need to advocate for media and information literacy sessions at school. We have to join support groups and organizations. There are many of them who are fighting for safe internet for young people. And the more we support them, the better and safer the internet will become for our children.